You have an idea. You want to tell it to the world, but you don't know where to start. That's where Anchor comes in. They have the tools for you to edit, produce, and record your idea right from your phone or computer. It's the easiest way to reach and grow your audience. They publish for you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms. And to top it all off, they match you with advertisers so you can earn from your passion and your wonderful idea. So tell me, what are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and follow your dream. You're listening to Disruptive Adventism, a podcast about community, conversation, and conflict, where your ideas, traditions, and practices can be analyzed and changed. My name is Jose Briones, and I invite you to listen, to learn, and to live a life of purpose and disruption. Hey guys, welcome to never mind. Welcome to Disruptive Adventism, everyone. Just playing off a joke from Ryan Becker a couple of weeks ago when he had me on his podcast. Now it is my turn to host him here on Disruptive Adventism, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. So, Ryan, how's it going?
It's good, man. I'm glad that, I love that you were on my podcast a couple weeks ago, but we're recording this around the same time that we recorded you on mine, and we're still at my apartment. I love that I've been able to spend a couple days with you and catch up with you, talk about podcasting, talk about dreaming together in the future and what this kind of looks like. So I'm really good. I'm glad to be here with you and honored to be on Disruptive Adventism.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have the Ryan Becker from Absurdity with Ryan Becker. And if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check it out. Today, we're going to actually be talking about the podcast that Ryan hosts, and as a part of our Podcasters of Adventism series. So let's start with how we always start. So getting to know our guests. So Ryan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
All right. So I am 25 years old. I graduated from Southern in 2015 with a degree in theology. I pastored for 2 years from 2016 to late 2018. I pastored a 2-church district in rural South Carolina, and then recently moved back to Collegedale and accepted a job at Southern as an admissions counselor, ministry coordinator for enrollment. And so I've been back here for about 2 months now. And yeah, I love ministry. I've born and raised Adventist, born and raised in Orlando, Florida, then came to Southern. So went that traditional route, but from where I'm from, and always in Adventist education and always in the Adventist church. And of course I had like my rebel phase that everyone kind of goes through where they're like, no, I'm, either they fully rebel or they go the route that I went, which is like, oh no, I love Jesus, not religion, sort of, that route. Like, that's kind of a little bit of my backstory. I'm unmarried. I live in an apartment with my dog, Sugar, a 9-year-old corgi that everyone loves more than me. For good reason. I love her more than me. So she is my best friend. And I host Absurdity. I host the Lead podcast, and I host the Echo podcast.
Awesome. And that's a lot of podcasts. But today we're going to be focusing on Absurdity and kind of like the backstory behind Absurdity and what kind of prompted you to get there. As he said, he is single. So ladies out there, make sure to hit him up. I'm going to be putting his info, just not his phone number, but you can ask me if you can DM me, and maybe I'll do some good job out there for Ryan. But Ryan, tell me like a little bit more. Why did you start Absurdity?
So a couple of years ago when I was out pastoring, one of the biggest struggle for me when I was pastoring was not actually the job itself. The job itself had its challenges, but the real struggle was my own isolation and my own loneliness that I was experiencing. I was the only young adult in either church, and I love both churches. That's not an indictment against them. That's not an indictment against any of the members, but you want to hang out with people your age when you're talking about building friendships too, and building that strong sense of close community. And even Jesus's disciples were not, super far away from him in age, maybe a decade at most. So not super far, but so I didn't have that. I was looking for some way, some outlet for that. But on top of that, that's just kind of like a correlation thing where that's part one. Part two is actually, it has to do with the Pulse shooting, the nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida. And when that happened, I remember the next day seeing a lot of my friends posting on Facebook, I was going to go to the Pulse nightclub, the Pulse nightclub last night, but I, for whatever reason, decided not to. I decided to go to sleep or do something else. Coincidentally, that was also the time that I found out that a lot of my friends were LGBTQ+. I didn't know some of them. I knew some, not others. And I felt I felt conflicted because I wanted to do something, but I was in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, with churches that that wasn't their platform. They didn't really, necessarily, they cared in as much as they felt sorry for the victims, but this wasn't a cause that they championed, right? This isn't something they're passionate about. So I felt this fire in me to use my voice in whatever way I could, do something to show support, to give voice to these people who are unloved, to the point that someone would walk into, basically, if you're LGBT, you walk into a club like that, that's church to you. That's the place that you can be vulnerable. That's the one place you can walk into, talk to someone that you might be interested in, and you're guaranteed basically to know that they at least are into the same gender, right? Like that's safe for them. Us as straight people, like we can walk into anywhere and kind of just assume 99% of the time we're going to be talking to someone who is straight. They don't get that except in those places. So this is a sacred space for them that's been absolutely violated. And they have no one speaking up for them. They are, and so for them to experience this hate, I was like, what can I do from where I'm at to show support, not only to them, but to all social justice issues in general? And then I realized podcasting would be a great way because it's something I can do with all the free time I had. And it's a way that I can create conversation in my life that fills that isolation a bit, that band-aids it, and is a way that I can lend my voice to those issues. And so Absurdity was born. I started recording into my laptop, super cringy. The first episodes I learned as I went, upgraded through microphones really quickly. And now at the time of this recording, we're 63 episodes in. So, and that's crazy to me just to see how far the journey's come. And that was started 2 years ago. And just in 2018, we started recording or releasing episodes weekly.
Yes, I remember when you released like, oh, this is going to be like my life now, like, and started doing podcasting. And then I remember when let's talk about Tony and like a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
It's just like, I remember when Tony came in as a regular, like, and like, I know he did like an interview, like kind of like a talk with you on a topic. And then he came on as your co-host.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about Tony. I think that you guys do a great job
Thank you.
in the podcast. But how did he come on? Like, what was the backstory behind that?
So what's crazy is he came on as a result of kind of the goal of one of my episodes. The goal wasn't to get a co-host, but it was episode 17, and the episode's called When Leadership Falls Short. And it was discussing what happened at last year's annual council in 2017 with the Unity document, some of those discussions that happened. I talked about leadership kind of failing us on occasion and some of the issues that had taken place there, some of the things that I felt were shady or, had not happened entirely correctly. And at the end of it, I said, okay, so what do we do about these problems? Like, what do we do when we see this happen? And my call to action was to get engaged. So my call to action wasn't to leave, wasn't to boycott. It was to actually, the solution to these problems that we see at the top of our church is to get involved and to actually make a difference, because you have the same right to sit in those committee meetings as anyone else in the church. That's the way the church works. So you getting involved earns you a seat at those tables. And so that was my call to action. Tony heard that episode, and Tony's been one of my best friends for years, since my freshman year at Southern 6-7 years ago. And he heard that and he said, I'm right there with you. I want to get involved. I want to do something. I want to lend my voice to issues. I want to talk about these things. And so he reached out to me. I put him in on an episode kind of as a trial run. Well, A, I wanted to bring on a friend, but B, it was a trial run to see how we worked. And then he just kind of kept coming on. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm committed to this. Let's do it. And so he's become my official co-host. And the reason he's unofficial, he's not in any of the branding or anything, is not a selfish choice. It's literally because if the day comes that he decides, this is my thing, and I don't know that I don't want to make it his thing unless he wants to make it his thing.
Right.
So if the day comes that he wants to walk away for whatever reason, or he's asked to walk away for whatever reason by someone else or by time commitments, I don't want him to ever feel like, oh, great, now I have to redo the logo and the branding and all this. I want it just to be able to be a free thing that he can leave at any time.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, there's an element of having a team. Like, for me, having a team of co-hosts and social media, like, it's always great, to have people that support you and that kind of like have the same vision. And I know, like, I personally appreciate my team. So shout out to my team, Felipe, Macy, Caitlin, Marcelo. And well, we're trying to also, well, at the time of this recording, we still don't have a producer, and that's
neither do I. I am the producer. Yeah, you're the producer.
I am, and and as let's kind of go into that kind of arena, which is like, how's the workflow? But just wanted to finish saying my team is awesome, and your team is great too. I know you guys hired a social media coordinator recently.
Yes,
and it really helps. It really helps to have someone kind of like you produce the content. They kind of take care of like, more of the social media aspect. But tell me more about workflow. Like, how is it for you guys? How often do you guys record, and how is it for that?
Yeah. So it was a lot easier when I was a pastor and could control my own schedule. Now that I work office hours from 8 to 5:30 every day, for Monday through Thursday, and then 8 to 12:30 on Fridays, it makes it harder to, figure out when we can record that works with both of us. So we try to record weekly. On occasion, we'll record 2 episodes in one go. So we'll sit there for 2 hours and just bang 2 episodes out real quick. And as far as how we choose topics, sometimes the topics are chosen for us based on current events. Sometimes it's, hey, what are things that have been, what are conversations we've been having with people, or what are important issues that we just haven't talked about yet. So we've done mental illness, we've done video games and nerd culture in general. And the reason, now you might be thinking like, wait, didn't he start this podcast for social justice stuff? What I found out, and what we realized as we were discussing these, is that all of the religious issues, the way that we perceive these things spiritually, impacts the social justice side of it. So it's 100% worth diving into the religious aspect of it, because that will help give some perspective and change perspectives on the social justice angle. So yeah, we've talked about everything. And part of it, I'll be honest, like, he and I are best friends. So we would have these conversations anyways. Like, you're really listening to 2 normal conversations with us. The only difference is I know there's a third person at the table, and we try to include the listener in that, but really it's us talking. So our outlines don't have to be that in depth. We just kind of have some major talking points, and then we go through it, and we've got a good flow to it. Sometimes one of us will talk too long. That just happens. And then after editing, he actually records on his end. I record on my end. That way it always sounds like we're in the same room. And he sends me the file through Dropbox, and then I put them in through Audition, though soon it'll be Reaper is the program I'll be using, and put them through. I edit the episode together, and it took me a while to get to where I am now. So if you listen from episode 1 to episode 63, it'll get better. But if you listen backwards, the podcast will get worse.
Right.
It used to take me an hour, 2 hours per episode. Now it takes me about 15, 20 minutes to edit an episode. Actually, when I used to do solo episodes, which I might bring some of them back, my solo episodes stopped around the mid-20s, and they took me upwards of 6-7 hours to do, because I also had to write them. I had to script them out, and that's a lot more work.
I do agree with you on that one. Definitely for me, when I first started, like, writing the script was such a long time, because I was like, I wanted to get it perfect, and like, and it's, since you have no one, you're literally speaking into the air. It's kind of like, are people actually going to get this? Are people actually going to like this idea? So I definitely get you on that one. Now, besides the workflow, what are some of the like obstacles that you have had with Absurdity so far?
That's hard. One of the obstacles, honestly, has been getting feedback. I get a lot of positive feedback, which is great, but I haven't really heard from anyone who hates the content. who dislikes it. And I
except for that one
except
star.
for that, I do have a 1-star rating, not a review, a rating on iTunes, but they didn't leave a review, so I don't know what they think. And the reason that I want that, this is a be careful what you wish for, right? I'm going to keep talking about this, and then I'm going to get this flood of hate all of a sudden. The reason that I bring that up is because A, it's an ego thing. I don't want to think I'm the best person in the world. I already know that. I don't need you to reinforce it. All right. But B, that content helps refine what I'm saying, because I think sometimes people will get offended because I may have said something wrong. I may have, said something slightly inaccurately. And for someone to call me out on those things because it actually genuinely hurt their feelings helps me go, oh, hey, here's where I messed up and need to learn. Mm-hmm. Like this is, for me, absurdity is figuring out how to navigate these conversations. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate them. And sometimes I need help with that. So that's been a struggle. The other struggle has been the time, the energy to put into it. Sometimes I'm just tired. Sometimes we record the episodes late at night and it's, after a full day of work and I have work the next morning, it can be hard. And sometimes it's the nerves. I don't know who's listening. You never know, and you never know what's going to happen as a result. So it's those have been, I think, some of the bigger obstacles, more on a nebulous side of things. But yeah.
Now, as you kind of started, and we've been talking. We have a group. I mean, kind of like disclosing out there, we have a group called Podcasters of Adventism, and that's where kind of like this idea for this series kind of came to me, because I think it's important to kind of showcase the different people and different opinions that are out there, but when it comes to some of the things that you're doing, and since you've been sharing, you kind of have now a social media manager, and you've shared in the past that you want to get a producer. So what are some of the goals that Absurdity has, for the future?
Yeah. So I do have a social media manager. I don't pay her enough. I actually want to double her pay at some point. So
she's hearing this. So
my goals are financial. Honestly, that's what they are. My goals are mainly financial, because I want to make enough money to be able to pay people what they're worth to do the things they do. My social media manager does this because she's passionate about it, and and that's fine. But I want to value people fully financially for what they do. So I want to hire a producer that will edit episodes, that will post them for me, so that all I have to focus on is the actual content itself and recording it. That's what I want to be able to focus in on. And I understand that the other side is a weakness of mine. And instead of sitting there trying to get my weaknesses to be better, I'd rather focus on getting my strengths up to where refining my strengths. And instead of trying to make my weaknesses perfect, instead, let me delegate and empower someone else in those areas to use their strengths. So that's number one. Number two, actually by June of 20, right now I average about 1,000 downloads per episode, depending on the episode. And I'd like to double that by June of 2019. So I'd like to have 2,000 downloads per episode by June of 2019. So I'm working full steam ahead towards that goal. I do want to get more diverse guests on, and I want to get a wider range of opinions and perspectives for sure. Right now, it's a lot of just Tony and me, which is fine. People like our opinions. I like talking with Tony. The episodes are fine, but I don't want to be talking in a vacuum. And if I'm going to navigate these conversations, I need to bring those people in. So those are some of the goals that I have, some of the concrete goals I have. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, when you're talking about the financial, it's just it's always you and I, at the end of the episode, we always say, support us on Patreon, and it's true, it really helps. Like you say, $1 a month, it helps. It really helps, because I think a lot of people, I think I was asked a couple of days ago, so is your podcast free? And I'm like, yeah, it's free for you to listen on iTunes, but it's not free for me.
No, I'm dumping what I between ads and my Patreon right now, I make about $75 a month on this, running Absurdity, but I spend almost $300.
Right.
I do spend $300 basically a month on the podcast, and that's of my own. This is a labor of love, and I'm not saying oh, woe is me. I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to. You. But it's one of those things where you pay $10 a month for Netflix, $12 a month for Hulu. You pay, all this $10 a month for Spotify, or to you students out there, $5 a month. And that's for hours and hours of content that you're binge watching or listening to. $1 for my podcast, it's 4 hours a month. $1 for 4 hours of content is not a big ask. $1 for you, you're also releasing about 4 hours worth of content. It's the same ask per month. Like that's not a huge, and that's not me like trying to. I'm just saying, like, it helps. It just helps offset those costs, and it's an affirmation to you. It's an affirmation to me to say, yes, we believe in what you're doing and we want you to continue.
Yeah, and I think that is just a reflection, honestly, sometimes of the space in which we are. You know, content creation in the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a whole. It's really hard. Like, you know, I mean, you think of guys like Humans of Adventism or that Christian vlogger, you know, shout out to those guys. If you're listening, you know, if you don't contact any of us, like, you know, we know you did not listen.
Yes, exactly.
We're just kidding. But, you know, I enjoy those podcasts too, or, I mean, pictures from Humans of Adventism, like, you know, the interviews, the stories, or the videos. And I'm definitely, or Matt Lucio with
Adventist History. Yeah, Adventist History
podcast, which he will be here too, hopefully, if he gets back to me soon. We need to record. It's just like a bunch of time for recording. But yeah, I get you, man. Like, you know, it's really hard sometimes to get people to kind of buy into the vision, you know, and just be there for you and for everyone. But when it comes to Absurdity, do you think that one day you just want to do that for your job? Is that like a goal as well?
I would love for content creation in general to be something that I do, like media output in general. So I don't think that podcasting on its own is going to be a full income thing within Adventism. Someone can prove me wrong. I'm more than happy. You can prove me wrong and give me all the money in the world. Like, that's fine with me too. Support me out of bitterness. That's fine. But I would love to produce more or have multiple outlets that are producing great content that people love and have those multiple streams of income be a full-time job for me. I would absolutely love that. But for now, I'm happy to be but the other half of that is there's a part of me that says no, because I don't want to ever feel like my content needs to be muzzled because I'm worried about losing my biggest donor. Does that make sense? Like, so I don't want to be tied to the money, which is why I don't want Absurdity to be its own. I don't want to have all of my income as a result of Absurdity. I want it from multiple income streams so that I'm kind of the tent maker model, and which is currently what I'm doing. I work at Southern, and then Absurdity brings in a tiny bit of money on the side. That's fine. That's kind of what I'd like to do.
One question that we're asking throughout this Podcasters of Adventism series is, what makes Absurdity unique?
It's absurd.
Okay.
You're welcome. Someone's like, all right, I'm not listening.
But yeah, what makes it unique from, you know, AU's Table Talk or SDA Millennial or, you know, Adventist History Podcast
or Disruptive Adventism.
Or Disruptive Adventism.
There's a party that just want to be like, well, I'm good. No. Honestly, one of the things that makes us different, I think, is the way that Tony and I navigate conversations, the way we try to. Very open and honest on the podcast, as much as we possibly can be, sometimes to our own detriment. We did one on mental health counseling and the stigmas against it. That was episode 62. And in there, I talk about some of my own, like, really deep issues that I'm working through right now as we speak, that I'm fighting myself on and seeking a counselor to deal with. So we're very raw and honest about our own experiences. But on top of that, we try to give as accurate of information on things as we can. We're not reporters by any means, but when it comes to breaking down general conference stuff, annual council stuff, some of these social justice issues, we try to tackle them from a wide variety of perspectives in a way that is simple to understand, but also isn't necessarily like one episode we did. We actually agree. We're talking about a video that was released, and we agree with the video, but we spend 40 minutes of the episode critiquing it. But we actually agree with the video, so it's one of those things. So we do have a wide variety of perspectives. Also, we've been doing it longer than a lot of, I think, Adventist History podcast of the big Adventist ones that are out now. The two that have gone longer than us are Adventist History Podcast and Mission Lab with Sean and Camille Brace. I think those are the two that are current, that are still being uploaded on a regular basis or updated on the regular basis. Those are the two that have outlasted us so far. But those would be some of the things I would cite as what makes us unique.
Cool. That's great. Well, as we start kind of finishing the podcast here, tell us a little bit more about, what do you see the branding? Like, why did you decide to call it Absurdity?
Quite frankly, because I think it's absurd that we're dealing with a lot of these things in 2018. Like that's the easiest way to describe it. But to break that down a little bit more, there's actually another side of this too, which is there's part of me that believes that everything is absurd. Period. Every belief system is absurd, and I'm full on Adventist. I'm actually a lay pastor still of a local church plant in the area, so I'm still pastoring, right? I'm still fully Adventist, but what I believe is absurd. And here's what I mean by that. If you break something down into like explaining it like I'm 5 years old, explaining it like I'm 3 years old, it all sounds absurd. I believe that 6,000 years ago, God created man and woman and they ate a fruit and now we all die because of it. You know what I mean? Like if you really just kind of dumb it down and dumb everything down, everything sounds absurd. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that as an equalizer. Because if everything's absurd and we just start from there, then I'm not coming from a place of I'm better than you. I'm not coming from a place that my belief system is better than yours. It's rather, hey, we both have things that are imperfect about what we believe or about the perspectives we have. So let's figure out how to navigate these conversations from the place that both of us are equal. And that is the reason I approach it from that perspective instead of from the perspective that in the eyes of God, we're all equal, is because the person that's sitting across from me doesn't always believe in God. So they're not going to buy into that belief. But if I start from a more objective standpoint that also criticizes my own belief system, it's disarming in a safe way and opens the door to, I think, more honest and authentic conversation.
That's awesome. Or absurd.
It's absurd.
Yeah, there it is. Well, Ryan, tell us, where can we find you? Where is Absurdity available? Where is Absurdity with Ryan Becker available?
Absurdity is on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, most podcatching apps, basically. You can also go to theabsurdity.org and find all the episodes there. Patreon.com/Absurdity Podcast if you want to support. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan180Becker. You can DM me, you can tweet at me, doesn't matter. I'd love to talk.
Are you expecting them to go to Twitter and at you?
Yeah, go ahead. Come at me.
There it is.
Come at me, bro.
All right. Well, Ryan, thanks a bunch for taking the time to record and to talk a little bit more about Absurdity and how absurd it is. I enjoyed your podcast and I really appreciate it. It really makes me laugh sometimes. Definitely. And it makes me think about other important things as well. You guys have a different flavor, definitely. That bring, and that's the awesome thing about the podcasters of Adventism. We all have different flavors and we all bring something to the table, but we're all committed to, bringing content that is quality and that makes people think about what they're doing. So I'm really excited for the wave and for this series. And as we continue, well, as it is our tradition here, we have the last word with Ryan Becker from Absurdity. So what is the last word on your podcast and any other thing that you want to say?
This is a growing experience for me and every other podcaster out there. The best thing that you can do if you're trying to find content and help us get better too, is to reach out to us and let us know how you think we're doing and give us honest feedback. Not just say, oh, I really like your podcast, but what about it? Or I hate your podcast. Okay, what about it? And the other thing too, I would say is if you're passionate about something, if you are wanting to speak up about something, podcasting has never been cheaper to do. And I'm happy to saturate this market. So if you want to start a podcast, you can also reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you get all that together and started.
We'll put you in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine. And but other than that, yeah, do your thing, do what God has called you to do what you're passionate about, and don't let anyone stop you.
You've been listening to Disruptive Adventism. We hope that today's topic helped you to think and change something about your practices, about your faith, about your Adventism. If you want to subscribe, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be there. And make sure to give us a review if you like what you're listening to. If you want to support, make sure to go to patreon.com/disruptiveadventism. It helps us pay our bills and produce the content that you're listening to. And if you want to socialize, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram or on Twitter, and hit us up whenever you need anything. We'll be there to support you. Thank you for listening today. We hope you join us next time. And as always, we invite you to be disruptive.